My stepfather said, if you want to keep living here, you'll start paying rent, $2,000 a month. So, I bought the house from the landlord that same day. The look on his face when I handed him his eviction letter, priceless. I'm 24, work in tech, and make good money as a software developer. About 8 months ago, I moved back in with my mom and stepfather temporarily while I was looking for a house to buy in the area. The housing market was crazy, and I figured staying with family would let me save up for a bigger down payment while I found the right place. My mom, Lisa, married my stepfather, Greg, about 5 years ago. Greg's always been kind of a tool, but my mom seems happy, so I keep my mouth shut. He works in middle management at some manufacturing company and acts like he's the CEO of Google. Always talking about his business strategies and management philosophy, like he's running Fortune 500 companies instead of supervising 12 people who make car parts. The house they live in is actually pretty nice. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, decent neighborhood. I always assumed Greg owned it since he talks constantly about property values and real estate investments. He's always bragging about how smart he was to buy in this area, how much equity he's built up, how property ownership is the key to wealth building. I was paying my mom $500 a month to help with groceries and utilities, which seemed fair. I kept my stuff in the spare bedroom, did my own laundry, cleaned up after myself. I was basically the ideal house guest, barely around except to sleep since I work long hours and spend most weekends apartment hunting. 2 months ago, I came home from work around 7 o'clock to find Greg sitting at the kitchen table with a bunch of papers spread out in front of him. He had this serious expression on his face like he was about to deliver some major business presentation. "We need to talk," he said without looking up. My mom was cooking dinner and gave me this apologetic look that immediately put me on edge. "What's up?" I asked. Greg cleared his throat and launched into what was clearly a rehearsed speech. "You've been living here for 6 months now, and frankly, the arrangement isn't working anymore. You're 24 years old. You make decent money, and it's time you started contributing your fair share." I looked at my mom, confused. I thought $500 a month was my fair share. $500 doesn't even cover the increased utility costs. Greg said, "You're using internet, electricity, water, heat. You're taking up space that we could be using for other purposes. This is a business decision." "A business decision? If you want to continue living here, you'll need to start paying market rate rent, $2,000 a month, plus utilities." I nearly laughed out loud. $2,000 for a spare bedroom? "This is a prime location," Greg said, sliding a piece of paper across the table. I did research. Comparable rooms in this area rent for $1,800 to $2,200. I'm actually giving you a deal at $2,000. I picked up the paper and looked at it. He printed out rental listings from different websites, but they were all for full apartments, not spare bedrooms. This guy was trying to charge me apartment rent for a bedroom in someone else's house. "Greg, these are all full apartments," I said. "Location is location," he replied. "Real estate is about square footage and proximity to amenities. You're getting access to the full house, not just the bedroom." My mom finally spoke up. "Maybe we could discuss a lower amount." Greg cut her off. "Lisa, we talked about this. This is a business decision, not an emotional one. Fair market value is fair market value." I looked at both of them, trying to process what was happening. "You want me to pay $2,000 a month to live in your spare bedroom?" "I want you to pay fair market value for prime real estate," Greg said. "You can take it or leave it, but those are the terms if you want to keep living here. And if I don't agree, then you'll need to find somewhere else to live. I'll give you 30 days to decide." The smugness in his voice was incredible. He was sitting there acting like he was doing me some huge favor by only charging me $2,000 for a bedroom. "Can I think about it over the weekend?" I asked. "Of course," Greg said. "But I'll need an answer by Monday. This is business, nothing personal." I went to my room and immediately started doing research. Something about Greg's whole presentation felt off. Since when does someone charge their stepson market rate rent for a spare bedroom? And why was he being so weird about calling it a business decision? I started looking up property records online. Our county has a website where you can search property ownership by address. I typed in our address and waited for the results to load. The house wasn't owned by Greg. It wasn't even owned by my mom. According to the county records, the house was owned by someone named Robert Patterson. It was a rental property. And based on the property tax records, Greg and my mom were tenants, not owners. This guy had been lying about owning the house for 5 years. I dug deeper and found that Mr. Patterson owns several rental properties in the area. I managed to find his contact information through a business directory and spent the weekend thinking about the most epic way to handle this situation. Greg thought he was being clever, trying to scam me out of $2,000 a month by pretending to own a house he was renting. He was basically trying to sublet me a bedroom for more money than most people pay for entire apartments. Monday morning, I called Mr. Patterson directly. "Hi, Mr. Patterson. My name is Jake. I'm interested in potentially purchasing rental properties in the area, and I noticed you own several. Would you be interested in discussing any sales?" "Funny you should call," he said. "I've actually been thinking about selling a few properties. I'm getting older and want to simplify my portfolio." "Which properties are you considering selling?" He gave me a few addresses, including the house where I was living. "The tenants there have been reliable for 5 years, he said. "Never missed a payment, but I'd rather sell it to someone who plans to live there instead of dealing with rental management." "What would you be asking for that property?" "I'd probably list it around $360,000, but I'd consider $360,000 for a quick cash sale." My heart started racing. I had been saving for a house down payment, but I also had a significant amount in investments that I could liquidate for a cash purchase. "Would you be interested in meeting this week to discuss it?" "Sure. Are you looking to keep the current tenants or move in yourself?" "I'd want to move in myself," I said. "That would require giving them proper notice. They're month to month now, so 60 days notice would be appropriate." We arranged to meet Wednesday afternoon to look at the property and discuss terms. Tuesday, I spent the day getting my finances in order. I called my investment advisor and started the process of liquidating enough stocks and bonds to make a cash offer. It would take about a week to get the funds available, but it was doable. Wednesday, I met Mr. Patterson at a coffee shop. He was a nice older guy, maybe in his 70s, who'd been renting properties for decades. "I've been thinking about selling this house for a while," he told me. "The tenants are good people, but I'm tired of dealing with maintenance calls and rent collection. A cash sale to someone who wants to live there would be perfect. What's the current rent situation? They pay $2,600 a month, half for the past 3 years. Started lower, but I've raised it with market rates. I nearly choked on my coffee. Greg was collecting $2,600 from me for rent when he was only paying that much for the entire house. The male tenant, Greg, has always handled the financial side, Mr. Patterson continued. Nice enough guy. Always talks about maybe buying the place himself someday, but never follows through. We spent an hour discussing the property details, condition, and neighborhood. Mr. Patterson was definitely motivated to sell and liked the idea of a cash transaction. If you're serious, I'd want to move quickly, he said. Cash sales can close in 3 to 4 weeks if we don't run into any issues. I'm very serious, I said. I can have proof of funds by early next week. We shook hands and agreed to meet again Monday with my proof of funds and his property disclosure documents. That weekend, I finalized liquidating my investments and got pre-approval documentation from my bank for the cash purchase. I also consulted with a real estate attorney about the process of buying a property with existing tenants. When you buy the property, you inherit the existing lease agreements, my lawyer explained. But if they're month to month and you want to occupy the property yourself, you can give them 60 days notice to vacate. What if one of the tenants has been subletting without permission? That would be a lease violation and grounds for immediate eviction with proper notice and legal process. Monday, I met with Mr. Patterson again and showed him my proof of funds. He had all the property documents ready, including the original lease agreement from 5 years ago and the subsequent month-to-month arrangement. We can close in 3 weeks if you want to move forward, he said. Let's do it. We signed a purchase agreement that afternoon with closing scheduled for 3 weeks out. Tuesday, I told Greg I needed a few more days to think about his rent proposal. Don't take too long, he said. I've got other people interested in the room if you're not serious about staying. Other people? I posted an ad online. Lots of interest at $2,000 a month. This is prime real estate. The guy was unbelievable. He was not only trying to scam me, he was advertising my bedroom to strangers while lying about owning the property. Over the next 3 weeks, I watched Greg get more and more smug about his business decision. He started talking about maybe converting the garage into another rental unit, about the potential income from his property. He even mentioned possibly raising my mom's portion of the expenses since property values were going up. The closing went smoothly. On a Friday morning, 3 weeks after signing the purchase agreement, I became the legal owner of the house where my mom and stepfather lived as tenants. Friday evening, I came home with a folder full of documents and asked Greg if we could talk. Have you made a decision about the rent? He asked. Actually, yes. I've decided I don't want to pay rent anymore. Greg's face lit up. I understand. It's a big commitment. When will you be moving out? I'm not moving out, I said. I'm not paying rent because I'm your landlord now. What are you talking about? I pulled out the deed and handed it to him. I bought the house, Greg. I'm your landlord now. Greg stared at the document for a full 30 seconds before looking up at me. This is a joke. No joke. I bought the house from Robert Patterson. Closed this morning. My mom came into the room and saw Greg holding the papers. What's going on? She asked. Your son thinks he bought our house, Greg said. I didn't think I bought it, Greg. I actually bought it. You've been renting this place for 5 years and trying to charge me $2,000 for a bedroom and a house you don't own. My mom looked confused. Greg, what is he talking about? We own this house. Tell her, Greg, I said. Tell her how you've been lying about owning this house for 5 years. Greg's face was turning red. This is ridiculous. You can't just buy someone's house. Actually, you can when they don't own it. I pulled out the original lease agreement. Here's your lease agreement with Mr. Patterson. Month to month now, $2,600 per month. My mom grabbed the lease and read it. I watched her face change as she realized Greg had been lying to her for years. You told me you own this house, she said quietly. It's complicated, Greg said. I was planning to buy it eventually. You were planning to buy it for 5 years? I asked, while telling everyone you already owned it, while bragging about your real estate investments and property values. This is insane, Greg said. You can't evict us. We have rights. You're absolutely right, I said. You have rights as tenants, but you also have obligations like not subletting without permission. I pulled out another document my lawyer had prepared. According to your lease agreement, subletting requires written permission from the landlord. You've been advertising my bedroom for rent and trying to collect $2,000 a month from me without Mr. Patterson's permission. That's a lease violation. Greg read the lease violation notice, and I could see his brain trying to process what was happening. However, I continued, since I want to live in my own house, I'm giving you 60 days notice to vacate the premises as allowed under your month-to-month agreement. I handed him the notice to vacate that my lawyer had prepared. Greg read the notice, and I swear I could see the exact moment he realized how completely he'd screwed himself. You can't do this, he said finally. Actually, I can. I'm the property owner. You're the tenant. Your lease allows me to terminate with 60 days notice when I want to occupy the property myself. This is revenge, he said. This is business, I replied. Nothing personal. The look on Greg's face was absolutely priceless. 5 minutes earlier, he thought he was my landlord trying to scam me out of $2,000 a month. Now he was getting evicted by his stepson from a house he'd been pretending to own for 5 years. My mom was still staring at the lease agreement. Greg, you've been lying to me for 5 years, she said. I never technically said I owned it, Greg said, which was complete garbage since I'd heard him bragging about ownership dozens of times. Absolutely did, my mom said. You've been telling everyone we own this house. You've been talking about property values and equity and home improvements like you own the place. Look, Greg said, turning back to me. Let's be reasonable here. We can work something out. What kind of something? I asked. You want me to move out? Fine, but Lisa shouldn't have to suffer because of a disagreement between us. Mom's welcome to stay, I said. She can sign a new lease with me at a reasonable rate, but you tried to scam me while lying about property ownership for 5 years. You're out. Greg looked panicked. You can't split up a family over this. I'm not splitting up anything. I'm evicting a tenant who violated his lease by trying to illegally sublet and collect rent on property he was lying about owning. It was a misunderstanding, Greg said. What was misunderstood? You tried to charge me nearly the entire monthly rent of the house for a single bedroom while pretending you own the property. My mom finally spoke up again. Greg, start looking for a new place. I need time to think about all of this. Lisa, you can't be serious. You lied to me for 5 years. She said, you've been pretending to own a house we're renting. Now you tried to scam your stepson out of $2,000 a month. I don't even know who you are anymore. Over the next few weeks, Greg tried everything to get me to change my mind. He offered to pay higher rent. He promised he'd never charge me anything again. He even offered to do yard work and maintenance for free. But I was done with his nonsense. The eviction went through exactly as planned. Greg moved out after 60 days, and my mom decided to stay. We worked out a lease where she pays me $1,500 a month, which covers about half my mortgage and gives us both a fair deal. Greg had to find a one-bedroom apartment across town because he couldn't afford anything decent on his manufacturing supervisor salary. Turns out when you're not living beyond your means in someone else's property while pretending to own it, your actual financial situation becomes pretty clear. The best part is that all his coworkers and friends now know he was lying about owning property. My mom told her family the whole story and word got around. Greg went from being the guy who bragged about real estate investments to the guy who got evicted by his stepson from a house he was pretending to own. My mom and I have a much better relationship now. She apologized for Greg's behavior and admitted she should have questioned his property ownership claims years ago. She filed for divorce last month and seems much happier. As for me, I'm now a property owner in a great neighborhood and I'm getting rental income that covers a good portion of my mortgage. Plus, I have a great story about the time I bought my stepfather's house out from under him when he tried to scam me. Greg texts me occasionally asking if I'd consider letting him move back in or selling him the house at a discount since he has history there. I don't respond. Some people never learn that actions have consequences. The house has actually appreciated in value since I bought it. Property values in the neighborhood have gone up about 6%, so I'm already ahead financially. Greg was right about one thing. It really is prime real estate. Too bad he never actually owned any of it. I kept screenshots of Greg's rental listing where he advertised my bedroom for $2,000 while pretending to own the house. Sometimes when I'm having a bad day, I look at them and remember the expression on his face when I handed him that eviction notice. Absolutely priceless.